We just heard from two amazing women about the climate and sustainability imperative that the planet must reckon with. The barriers to action can look like an immovable object. But I know, after spending the last 3 days with all of you, that you are an irrepressible force. So I love the moment where the irrepressible force meets the immovable object. There's chaos, and in that moment, enormous possibilities open up. Transformation is feasible. Let's look at transformation through my small lens of the Minnesota Community Solar Garden experience, and then let's talk about what that transformation that happened in Minnesota says about what will be required for all of us to take care of Mother Earth. Then let's talk about the $51 trillion that will be required for this transformation. And then let's talk about how you can step up and own your share. There we go. Less interesting slide. So every transformative idea faces a unique set of barriers. In Minnesota, our immovable object looked like this. We are an unlikely state to be a solar leader. We are the true north. Our entire state is north of Toronto, Canada. We have monopoly utilities that spend their resources fighting change. It's a monopoly's core competency to fight innovation and competition. By law, the monopolies own the electric grid, and they own their customers. But we had very strong customer demand for solar. In a free market, that demand would suffice. What was the irrepressible force that was needed here? The answer was a group of solar developers with a model for change. Our emerging industry banded together and replaced the law that prohibited private solar ownership with a law that created a framework encouraging solar energy. We also fought a very long fight against very well-funded opponents at the regulator of interconnection for grid access. In the end, the model for community solar allows a customer to subscribe to a share of a larger solar facility rather than putting panels on her own roof. The solar garden model drives the cost of distributed solar down substantially. Under this model, a customer could even own her own share of the facility. The great thing about this model is that it would work with any size of solar. Solar is so flexible, you could start with a suitcase that had a solar panel on one side and a transformer on the other, or you see the grids, the microgrids popping up around the globe. And in our case, we were interconnected into a centralized existing traditional monopoly grid. I'm worried I'm going to turn the music back on. While our changes were hard fought, we succeeded beyond our expectations. Minnesota went from having virtually no solar installed to having over 1,000 megawatts, making us the largest community solar state in the country. What are the takeaways for the planet and for each of you from this small example? First, Minnesota shows us that the ingredients for rapid transformation, what the ingredients are. Where there's a big societal imperative for change, and business has an audacious goal that is aligned with the imperative, the barriers to innovation can be overcome. Contrary to conventional wisdom, change can happen very quickly, even when inertia and resistance are powerful. Second, successful models like community solar can be exported to other markets. I recently had a chance to catch my breath from this 5-year solar marathon. I started scanning the market for my next opportunity. What I discovered is that in the past 4 years, something really big has happened in the world for women. In 2015, the UN adopted 17 sustainability development goals, and the world signed on. We've heard about this at this conference. These goals must all be met in order for us all to achieve the imperative of 9 billion people living well within the means of the planet in 2050. That's the 2050 global imperative. I looked at the new UN goals in terms of opportunities for innovation, which I define as the art of the barely achievable. I found something exciting and new. Right in the main body of the world's goals, women's economic empowerment is now front and center. It turns out that the data shows that we cannot achieve the 2050 imperative without economically empowering women in the process. Take a look here. Gender equality and empowerment are a standalone goal. Here's the language about women's economic empowerment. It's worded very strongly. Full participation in economic life, equal rights to resources, access to ownership, enforceable legislation. Goal number 5 is also included as a necessary component of 10 out of the 17 overall goals. Actually, goal number 5 was on the t-shirt of the French delegation at this conference, and that must mean it's really a big deal. While we may have seen goals like this before, there are some key differences that make goal number 5 on women's economic empowerment powerful and possible. First, this isn't just some UN report about what should happen. The world business community has signed on. Significant public and private sources of money are targeting these goals. Another reason these goals are powerful is that they are data-driven and measurable. What gets measured gets done. Well-funded organizations are measuring progress, country by country, on an annual basis. This creates a feedback loop that is a powerful tool for anyone seeking to play a part. I have the resources at the end of my slides, so these will end up on the Summit website if anyone's interested in references. If empowering women is necessary to prevent the planet from burning up, this means we have to press as hard as we can on the policy levers that we have to get there. What does it mean to economically empower women? Before I begin my story, here's a slide depicting urgency. It shows the Earth heating up one stripe for each year from the beginning of the industrial era. Here's my story. I grew up with the incredible privilege of believing that economic empowerment was my right. I was born in a small farming town. My parents had 5 kids, and they treated each other as equals. They had 5 children, and my mom had her own business. Imagine my shock when I went out into the big real world and started as a lawyer in a global law firm in Los Angeles. How could it be true that there were no women in the executive ranks of any of our corporate and banking clients? I accepted the assurance that once I was in my 50s, half of the CEOs and board members would be women. You know, the law and finance pipeline. When I became a senior executive in the power industry, and even when I became the CEO of a public company, you know the story they told me. I was the only woman in the room because the fossil fuel industry was engineering driven and naturally, therefore, male dominated. Okay, fast forward 30 years, and picture me in my pink dress walking into a solar conference. While the industry is a new industry led by a new generation, the ballroom was still 90% filled with men. While women drove the demand for sustainable energy, women aren't owning or leading the industry that was developed to meet this demand. We can change this situation where there are almost no women owners. And as we just learned, change can happen quickly and must happen quickly given the global imperative. Is it really possible? Before solar, I co-founded and ran a company with the goal of eliminating emissions from coal with an advanced clean technology. My company helped legislate a public-private partnership program and a federal loan guarantee program. We were awarded funds from the U.S. Department of Energy that enabled us to maintain ownership and control of a $2 billion project throughout the development process. So I know it's possible to create models where women can start and own businesses that drive transformation. We all know, don't we, that the best form of economic empowerment is ownership. We also know as my 30-year cautionary tale shows, that what got us here won't get us there, at least not in time to prevent the world from burning up. This time, though, we have the tools to make women's ownership happen. This time, we don't have to accept half measures. Some thought leaders right here in this room have proposed an equality moonshot, where women will own 30% of the value created in achieving the 2050 imperative. This is electrifying. Look, the Sustainable Development Goals are so disruptive of how we've done things in the past. The tectonic plates are shifting. Ladies, we are in that moment of chaos. It's a perfect time, a time of great possibilities. So, to you government leaders and sources of capital in the room, we know that for women to work in the system in this new way, you have to keep working on the system. Let's design the financing models so that as many women as possible can join the equality moonshot. We've seen the power of female ownership in the context of microcredit, as Nobel laureate Eunice shared with us last night. There are lots of other policy tools and models: loan guarantees, build, own, transfer, franchising, community solar. We need innovation not only on the scientific side, but also in politics, law, regulation, and finance. Are there any business owners in the room? If your business plan is aligned with any of these 17 UN goals, you now have a powerful new toolkit. It includes big allies, sources of capital looking at $51 trillion of opportunity, aggressive goals, compelling data, and experts measuring progress on women's involvement real time and holding us all accountable. After all, this is about the survival of us all. So I challenge you, on behalf of Mother Earth. Oh wait, that's not Mother Earth. Here's my parting challenge to you. Look at the problem set you're trying to solve with a fresh set of eyes. Take into account these new tools. On your trip home tomorrow, take out a piece of paper and give this exercise an hour. Take another look at any dream you've had where you thought the barriers were immovable. See if your possibilities have expanded. Be an irrepressible force. Mother Nature is depending on you. Thank you.